Hey guys, it's LOL_Rybun here, and today we're going to be talking about the Mercenary mode, what builds I would take on each and every class. I should note that almost none of these are tested. I have played Paladin, I have played Warlock, and I have played Ranger, I believe, on this mode. I have not played Sorcerer, Thief, Priest, Wizard, Gladiator, or Witch Hunter. But I'm going to do my best job to present builds to you guys that I would run in Gladiator mode and or Mercenary mode, sorry. And maybe you guys have your own little things that you would take for your personal preferences, and that's totally fine. I'm going to try to be as clear and concise and to the point as I can be, and provide the information that you guys want, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you guys. First and foremost, we're going to create a Mercenary. Just for the sake of creating a Mercenary and being able to see all the skills, it doesn't really matter who. I'm going to talk about each character piece by piece, and give you guys that information. So, first and foremost is Paladin. We'll go over the active skills that I would take and then the passive skills. First and foremost, for active skills, usually you want to take 2 offensive and 1 defensive. But the Paladin's kind of in a weird spot where he's melee. So what I would end up taking is 2 defensive and 1 offensive. In this case, I would take the grappling hook because I think it's just better than charge. It essentially does the same thing. It just doesn't deal damage, but it stuns for the same duration, and you're more defensive while using it. It's really good for trap clears. It's just a really good ability. I'd probably take grappling hook here. And then I would take Smoke Bomb for defensive, also for getting out of situations that you don't want to be in. Just a really, really good skill. And then for the final ability, I'd probably end up taking Whirlwind. I think Whirlwind's really, really good for offensive purposes, and I think it would work really, really well with what I'm going to say for passives. So that's what I'd take for active skills. For passive skills, I think you would go Marked Prey, because you can crit from on anything. Once you've hit them with your primary, you can crit them. Granted, you proc this, you can crit them twice essentially with this, or you can just crit them with this on top of critting normally. You basically amplifies your damage a whole ton. Marked Prey is really, really good. So I'd probably take Marked Prey, and in conjunction with Flames of Devotion, you're going to be hitting really, really hard with your primary and with your Whirlwind, which is really, really good. Once you have those two, you probably want a defensive skill, and for that, I'd probably take either A, Shield, or B, Divine Protection. I think both of these serve the purpose of protecting yourself really, really well. 30% reduction of damage, I think, is pretty good. But Shield is really, really good too because there's a chance to block damage flat out. But I prefer probably Divine Protection. From what I've seen how it works on the Priest, it's just a really, really good skill. You can call me strange for this one, but next comes the Sorcerer. And Sorcerer, I'm going to build primary based. And that doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think it'd be really, really fun. So that's what I'm going to do. Otherwise, I think I'd end up taking very similar skills to the base Sorcerer, and that's no fun. So what I would take here is Witch Pyre for defensive backaways. I think it's a really, really strong skill. As well as the Company Banner for attack speed and skill speed and mana regen. I think these will work really, really well together for creating a primary base Sorcerer. And last but not least, we need something else for utility, I think, more so than anything. I usually would pick movement. So I'd probably take Grappling Hook again. I love this skill. It's really good. You could also take Charge, but I just think you need some sort of movement skill here, and I would opt for Grappling Hook. It's just really, really good. You don't have to dash into people to deal damage, and it won't get stopped by... Well, it will get stopped by people, but you'll stun them guaranteed, and you can use it to grab onto walls and go through trap rooms really easily. I'd take those 3 skills, all to set up for my passives, which would be faster attacks from Slice and Dice, as well as the Marked Prey, And since we've taken so many defensive skills here, our passives can all be offensive. And my last one would either be Twinned Arrows or Flames of Devotion to buff the primary up. Potentially even Vicious Cuts, because we've got a projectile that bounces, and that's really, really strong for clearing rooms, I think. But this is percent health damage. It's not too good on the default mobs, so I'd probably opt for Flames of Devotion. So Flames of Devotion, Slice and Dice, and the Mark Prey for ultimate offensive damage dealing, I think is what I would take here. I think it'd be a really fun build to play. I don't know if it'd be the most viable, but that's what I would run. I think it sounds like a total blast. For Warlock, I'm going to stick kind of close to the original Warlock. The main thing I'm changing out is I'm not going to take the Lightning Bolt, and instead I'll be replacing it with Consecrated Grounds. I will, however, still be taking Summon Gargoyle and the Eye of the Storm. I think these will work really well together because in conjunction with the Gargoyle and the Storm, you'll be able to take Consecrated Ground and heal from that as well. For skills on this, you're obviously going to want to take the Stormlash, which means that your skills have a chance to unleash that Lightning Bolt and deal extra damage. Works really well with the Gargoyles in, conjunction with some other stuff. It's just really, really good. So I take Stormlash here, and then we're probably want to take some defensive stuff because we're pretty offensive based on my other stuff. So I'd probably take, I would like to say Soul Cleaver, because it'll heal you, but it's not on the primary anymore, so it's not as good. I'd probably take Sidestep for defensive stuff, and then maybe even on the Prowl. If you have both of these, you're gonna be moving fast and have tons of evasion, and you'll be really, really good. So that's what I'd probably take here. On the Prowl, Sidestep, and Stormlash for offense. And that's my Warlock build. Next up is the Ranger. And for the Ranger, I think they're kind of a weird spot because I don't really like active skills on the Ranger at all. But the key thing about the Ranger is that they have one of the fastest attack speeds in the game, and they can fire from a distance, which is really, really powerful. I think we're going to want to take advantage of that and use stuff to keep our distance so we can fire while standing still. So a lot of stuff I'm going to take here is defensive. In particular, I'm going to take Smoke Bomb for evasion chance, Pit Fighters to keep people at bay, and Witch Pyre to help out if they get past the Pit Fighters. These three are not offensive at all, but they're going to keep you alive, which makes sense for what we're about to pull in the second part, which are the passive skills. I always envisioned that the Ranger would be much better if they were able to dish out more damage than they already could. There's two kind of builds you can go here, both of which I would say use Mark Prey and Slice and Dice. If you take Mark Prey and Slice and Dice and Vicious Cuts, you'll be doing tons of damage to bosses, whereas if instead of Vicious Cuts, you take Twinned Arrows, you'll be doing tons of damage to rooms. If you have this attack speed plus Twinned Arrows, so extra attack speed from the Ranger's base plus the Twinned Arrows, which are so good in the normal game, you're going to be dealing tons and tons of damage. Combine that with Mark Prey, you're just going to be doing tons of damage. This is a little bit worse for bosses though, because you won't have tons of damage in terms of besides your base damage. Vicious Cuts basically takes that and says, yeah, I'm just going to do damage for no reason. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm going to love it. So this is definitely more bossing oriented, and this is more room clear oriented. But those are the passives that I would take for the Ranger. If we're being honest, the Thief doesn't really have much going for them other than their attack speed, in my personal opinion. I'd probably take very similar skills as to what you would take on the Thief. I love Grappling Hook. I've taken it in two of the previous builds. I'd take it in this one as well. I think it just functions really, really well for what you want to do on the Thief. I think you almost have to take Smokescreen as well, because you're going to be in it, and that's a defensive ability that's really, really good for that. So what we'll do instead is we'll change the right-click ability, your first one, with something else. And for that, I'm going to pick I'm gonna pick the company banner. The attack speed from this, similar to my thought process for Sorcerer, is gonna be really, really good because we're not gonna deviate too much from the Thief's other stuff. And so, company banner here, and then we take the other two skills we mentioned, and for passives, we're gonna stay very similar to the Thief with their normal stuff, with the attack speed. And then I would also take the Vicious Cuts because it's percent health damage on a very fast attack. They're proccing all the time with Slice and Dice. But for the last one, instead of Sidestep, it'll be a very offensive build, okay? We're going to take Marked Prey because marked targets have a 5% chance to receive critical damage from all sources of damage. So this can theoretically proc on our Vicious Cuts and deal a whole ton of damage, and it'll be really, really good for your overall damage here. And that's what I would go on the Thief. For the Priest, I'm gonna take Consecrated Ground as well as Lay on Hands for healing because the Priest is pretty slow. I'm actually, for once, not going to take movement-based stuff here, even though Priest is kind of melee. And instead, I'm going to do a hold my ground kind of build. And to do that, I'm going to take Summon Gargoyle. So you would plop down Consecrated Ground and plop down Gargoyles around it and let the enemies come to you and just wreak havoc on them. That's kind of the goal here. So in order to achieve that for our passives, we're going to need some pretty defensive stuff. I'm definitely going to take Divine Protection, similar to what you normally get on the Priest. And on top of that, I'll take Sidestep for the guaranteed evade and also evade chance. Last but not least, we want a little bit of damage here. So I'd probably take Stormlash because we already have the Gargoyles and they're going to be hitting pretty often. But that's just my personal opinion. I think you could also get away with some other stuff like, I don't know, the On the Prowl. It'll give you a little bit of movement speed. It's pretty nice. You take really any of this stuff, but I personally prefer the Stormlash here for damage. You could also take Celestial Orbs too, I guess. But we don't have Holy Light, so who knows? I don't think it's the best. I'd probably take Stormlash. So we take Divine Protection, Sidestep, and Stormlash for our passives on the Priest. For the Wizard, I'm going to go the full Glass Cannon route, kind of true to the original Wizard build. We're just going to go straight damage here, and we're going to try to do as much damage as we can and just absolutely demolish our enemies. To do this completely successfully, hopefully, I would take Orb of Winter, which is a very powerful sorcerer ability, in conjunction with Meteor Shower, a very powerful wizard ability. This one kind of goes forward and clears out a room in front of you, whereas Meteor Shower is more centered around killing enemies around you, which is really, really good. Last but not least, for our defensive ability, I'm going to take Pit Fighters. Pit Fighters will walk into a room ahead of you and tank enemies for you, and tank enemies that are chasing after you, while you can throw down these abilities and do tons of damage. Next, we're going to capitalize on all of the abilities that we have that are going to be doing damage all the time. We're going to take Stormlash, which has a chance to unleash lightning damage to nearby enemies, or to an enemy dealing damage, which will proc really, really often on the Orb of Winter, as well as Shatter, which gives enemies a chance to explode. These two combined are going to do a ton of damage, and to add more damage to the mix, as well as some survivability, we'll take Soul Cleaver, which will make more enemies explode, dealing damage and healing us and restoring our mana. This way, we can absolutely nuke rooms while healing ourselves and doing tons and tons of extra damage. I think it'll work out really, really well until you get hit. Okay, so for the Gladiator, this is a little bit weird because the ability that I like most from the Gladiator, which is wall attacking and having a stack of, recently expending a stack of Trident, you block damage basically. That's not available here. But we're still going to go a kind of stand your ground kind of build. Less centered around the Spinning Gladius and all of the stuff active skills wise of the Gladiator, and more so focused on the Gladiator shining through the ability to attack very rapidly with Trident. So first and foremost, we're gonna take consecrated grounds with company banner for attack and skill speed and healing in your area, and smoke screen as a kind of, or smoke bomb as a kind of escape, as well as an evasion boost for defensive purposes. For the skills, because we've mainly gone defensive over here, we're pretty much going exclusively offensive with marked prey and slice and dice to work in conjunction with getting faster attacks off in between the stacks of trident being expended, as well as vicious cuts to hopefully proc this on the extra damage from marked prey. I think this would work really well as a boss killer, but no guarantee. Maybe this won't work too well for room clear, but I think if you queue up with someone else and you play a game with them, this may be really good for killing bosses, and I think it's a very viable build for the Gladiator here. I'm not the biggest fan of the Witch Hunter, and therefore this build's me a little bit quirky, both because I think it'd be interesting to run. I think Witch Hunter may be the person to run it on, because I feel like none of their kit feels really fluid to me, so I'm really just going for broke here. And I'm gonna go a complete quote-unquote summoning build. So to do this, I'm gonna take Company Ballista, which fires ballista shots whenever you're near it. I'm gonna take Summon Gargoyle. These two in conjunction are gonna be really good for holding a point, but you need someone to keep them off as you so you can stand by your ballista, and that would be our pit fighters. So we're gonna spawn in pit fighters and run in with them and throw in these gargoyles, and then walk back a bit and plop down a ballista, which will continuously fire and pierce through armor, which fits really nicely with the Witch Hunter's attack because it also pierces armor. I think these three in conjunction will do a fair amount of damage and be really interesting to pull off because it's a summoning build. Usually there's like some amount of summons for here's Hammerwatch, but it's not like a widely, you know, like there's not like a bunch of summoning skills on one character. So I think this would be really fun to run. Last but not least, for the passives, we're gonna take Murder of Crows. We have to. It's another summon. This will be really good. They'll tank damage for you, I think. I'm not sure if that's true. I know they do have health bars, I believe. But they'll at least do damage. And to make our summons deal even more damage in our actives, we're going to take, yet again, where is it? Stormlash, so that everything has a chance to deal extra magical damage. And then last but not least, we're going to want Flames of Devotion, which adds damage to all of our skills. So all of our summons will be hitting really hard, and that is how this build's going to work. So Flames of Devotion, Murder of Crows, and the Stormlash for tons of damage on our summons. And that's what I'd run on the Witch Hunter. I know all these builds may not be completely traditional, or maybe even the best builds in their category or their class, but I think really like every single character in Here's a Hammerwatch is pretty much kitted out to work really well based on their specs, and maybe there's like a skill or something that you don't use. I think if you're really trying to go for an optimal build in Here's a Hammerwatch on a Gladiator, you pretty much will end up going roughly exactly what the base build is, because that's just how it works. Base builds are made to accomplish one specific thing that works really well for that class. Like Thief attacks really fast, has % health damage, has evasion to avoid damage. Two times the evasion of that of a ranger because they're up and close. But if you got rid of one of those, then you could pick something that maybe will work even better with your extra fast attacks like the Mark Prey. Really, Mercenary mode's all about experimentation. These builds today are builds that I think would work. I don't know if they're the best things ever, but they will definitely provide you something maybe a little bit more unique. Maybe they'll work for you, and maybe they'll be fun. I think Mercenary mode's all about, you know, having fun with the game and the customizability of Mercenary mode rather than, you know, working really hard to clear it. I think there's definitely some builds that you could look up and find out about that are working really well. I think those are usually geared around primary builds because you can't have statues in this mode. So you're gonna want to take stuff that makes you attack fast and hit hard and live, and that's the key to success in this mode. Hopefully, though, these builds are something that's fun and quirky that you can try out and enjoy. And without further ado, I guess that's the end of the video. I hope you guys found this information helpful, and maybe it helped inspire you to come up with your own builds. Anywho, I'm going to call it a night. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.